Welcome to Couples Unfiltered. I'm Lionel, a retired Marine drill instructor and master sergeant, and a widower learning to navigate life after loss.
And I'm Natalie, a retired nurse, also widowed, and now together we're navigating grief, healing, midlife changes, family dynamics, and everything in between.
Join us as we have real, unfiltered conversations about love, loss, and relationships.
We'll share stories, talk to others about their journeys, and drop a few cheat codes for making relationships work.
Listen, it's raw, it's real, and it's unfiltered.
Let's get started. Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 1 of Couples Unfiltered. Mm-hmm. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking around. We welcome all new listeners and our current listeners. We appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've been on a little hiatus, busy doing some things in our lives, our private lives. We are currently planning a Juneteenth celebration in the city we live in.
Yes.
It will be the first annual Juneteenth celebration, and we are busy, making this happen.
Technically, it'll be the second because we did the first one in our driveway.
That is true. So
but we're going to call it the first since everybody in the community can bear witness to what we're going to do.
Well, it'll also be a little more public.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we live in the city of San Marcos, and they have decided to proclaim Juneteenth as a holiday for our city. Mm-hmm. Lionel received the proclamation last year in June. Yeah. And so since then, we've felt a responsibility to make a celebration happen. And so that's been interesting. But I will say that during my research of kind of having to, shine my brain a little bit with the knowledge of Juneteenth, I went down a little rabbit hole of memories and realized there was a lot of things that I did not learn growing up. And also in my home, a lot of the things that I experienced were different than the things you experienced.
Yeah.
I mean, naturally, but I also went into some of my journals from when I was like a teenager.
Yes. And I got to sit through and hear the stories of young boyfriends and young loves and all the things in the journal.
My goodness. I was boy crazy, which is really sad and alarming, actually.
Yeah.
Reading those things. The one I started with, I think it was this end of my 8th grade year through the summer to the beginning of my 9th grade year of high school, where like pretty much everything intense happened to me. But it was also a time where I was having an identity crisis, that when someone asked me questions about my ethnicity, I always think I didn't have any problems, growing up, identifying with who I was just who I was, and, I didn't have any problems. But when I read my journal, I realized I had a lot of problems.
Right. And
it shaped the person who I am today. And so going into the relationship with you, I had a lot of light bulb moments, where it was like shocking for me that my Blackness was a little bit more on the forefront being with you. And that in my past, I had 26 years of marriage to a man that was not Black.
Right.
But being in that relationship all that time, knowing that my children are Black, but there were some things that I just didn't address. Mm-hmm. And I think like most people when they're living life, sometimes the things they feel need to be addressed when it comes to culture and differences and ethnicity differences, that it's something that they plan on doing at some point, but sometimes life just gets in the way and you just don't address it until something happens.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Something negative maybe, or thinking about your kids and what they may experience one day.
Yeah. But you know what? Something that's I started to realize as you and I were talking about these particular things was it also depends on where you grew up as well. Because, my first wife was Black, Black mom, Spanish dad, maybe. She doesn't really know. But she grew up in Detroit. So her upbringing and my upbringing, we had similar things. However, there was a lot of differences because of where we grew up. I didn't grow up in Detroit. I grew up in Ohio. Same as for you growing up in the Bay Area. There are some differences. There is some geographical differences that come into play as well. Because historically, where you are, there's a lot of things historically from the demographics of where you are. So.
Right, like that East Coast, the stuff people were experiencing there.
Yeah, the Great Migration up into from the South up to the North, Cleveland and different places like that, and the migration from the South to California.
Yeah,
and it was during the gold rush, so there was a lot of historical things, and a lot of things that people know that are here in California that people in Ohio don't know, and vice versa.
Right.
So there's a lot of differences.
Well, I was a product of a biracial or interracial relationship, and my mother was white and my father was black, both deceased now. But they, got married in the 70s when it was pretty, aggressive environment for them to be an interracial couple. Living in California, having mixed kids, me and my sister were kind of what people used to call exotic, right? And I say that because it's silly, because to me that's not the definition of that word. But where I was raised was very diverse.
Yeah.
So we had Filipinos, we had Hispanic people, we had mixed people, we had a lot of different other Asians and Guamanian and black and white. And so I was not rejected when I was little, from people, because that wasn't such a big deal. The ethnicity wasn't such a big deal when you're super small. But when you become a teenager and you start listening to adults talking and you start kind of taking on the personalities of your environment, and, I'll never forget that movie, Spike Lee's movie, School Days.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So that movie actually came out 37 years ago today. Today. Yes.
Oh, I love it, because we were, I don't know what happened, but we just wanted to see it. It was, as we were having this conversation, it was like, all right, let's dive in and let's start.
Well, the diving in was more because we have this joke, this running joke, which, a lot of black people know this joke about having your black card taken from you. And, that's something we tease about, that he wants to take my black card sometimes because I haven't seen some of these movies.
Well, we also talked about this during our season finale episode. We talked about really diving into culturally aware movies, black movies or what have you, from black directors, and movies that have a message. So
that message for me, watching that movie now, I had all of these memories. I went straight back to that time where I was like, this is the movie that changed my life.
Right.
This movie just took me on a completely different trajectory of not being so concerned about the things people were saying about me. So if anybody hasn't watched this movie, you should go see it. It's School Days. It's spelled D-A-Z-E. D-A-Z-E, yes. And it came out in 1988. And it explores issues within the Black American community, such as colorism and elitism, classism, political activism, hazing, female self-esteem, social mobility, and hair texture bias.
And these are black people versus black people.
Right. And it was all against the backdrop of a historically black college.
Yes.
So it was a made-up college, but, and then there was several movies that came after that, like Do the Right Thing and Jungle Fever.
Yeah.
But
Spike Lee was hitting it out the park. He was. But I resonated with those girls that had the good hair. They did this whole, it's kind of like a musical. They did this back and forth thing, good and bad hair. Good and bad hair.
And I remember just watching that and going, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one going through that.
Right.
Like there's actually they're making a movie about the issues that I'm having.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I'm not alone. I am not an anomaly. I'm not looked at as being like an alien almost sometimes in the places that I would go as an older person. Like, as a teenager, of course, I had my sister who had similar features as me. And I did find a best friend who was also black and white mixed. And we just were super tight. My friend Jana, we're just like super tight to this day. She's my very best friend, 30 plus years. And, you know, I was able to kind of connect with her and have the, you know, the similar experiences growing up. But even though I realized that, actually what I realized is that I had a lot of privilege, that at the time I had no clue that I had privilege. And so I didn't experience racism. And I think that the colorism that I experienced within the Black community, I was rejected by a lot of my peers that were Black. And I ended up having some experiences that kind of pushed me in a direction of hanging around people that I just felt more welcomed with. And I had my moments where I switched around, and you know, it was almost like based on music. Like, so I had a group of friends.
That's how we grew up
right?
with music. Yeah.
Well, but in California,
it defined us.
I feel like we had a little bit more of, like, well, at least where I was, it's not just about like the Blacks listen to rap, the Hispanic people listen to whatever they were listening to at the time. The friends that I had that were like surfer girls, they would listen to like rock, you know? And so I had friend groups that listened to different music, and it just so happened that the ethnic group they were in, or non-ethnic, had a lot to do with the music. So I would dress a certain way.
Yeah, oh my God.
Depending on what group I was in. And so I hopped around, and I think that's kind of normal, like depending on your age, I think that's kind of normal.
Well, you've adapted. I think you've adapted every aspect of all of those cultures to develop and to become the woman that you are today, because there's the Madonna in you.
Oh, yeah.
There's the Lisa in you. There is the E40 Too Short.
Oh yeah, because there was a time in my life where I was listening to deep underground rap, and I mean, I was doing all the activities that was attached to that music as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was hanging out in East Palo Alto and hanging out in Oakland and doing a lot of things that today we would never allow our children to leave the house if they would even attempt to do those things. And I'm not saying that rap music led me to do bad things, but I'm talking deep underground.
Yeah, I was gonna feel I'll be offended if you say that.
No, but I mean, that's when I was getting in the most trouble, because I was trying to be hard, and I was trying to be, you know, I was fighting a lot and just had no fear.
Well, music has a way of influencing who we are. It is the soundtrack to our life. How we listen to things. I remember being, you know, a young teenager and the first time hearing NWA. And I'm in Ohio, and I hear this album. It's like, what is that we're listening to? I remember listening to artists like Brother Lynch Hung. Probably nobody knows who this guy is, but it left an imprint on my brain. So the music that we listen to really shaped the people that we are.
100%. And if you're looking at somebody, you identify if they look like you.
Right.
You know, or if you're attracted to a certain type of look, you like that music because that person, you're attracted to the way they look, so you listen to the music.
Yeah.
And, you know, we both had experiences with that, probably very simultaneously, not knowing each other. We were probably going through some similar things when it came to music, but we were also probably going through some similar things when it came to race. And
man, let me tell you.
Yeah, because I remember being the initiator of some of those bad jokes and calling people names, but I think it was on the back of me being called a lot of names and really not feeling offended, but thinking, should I be? Like, is this something bad? Like, why are people making fun of me and saying things? And then I'm just laughing it off. And then, of course, I grow up later and I look back and I go, oh my gosh, like, I allowed so much ridicule, and the attention that was put on my look was, affected a lot of things in my life. I used to, get called, people used to say I wasn't black enough.
So I'm not black enough. I'm too black.
Yeah, and
that was
high yellow.
Oh, you got that. And red bone was a thing.
Yes, red bone.
That was said.
Mm-hmm.
I was.
That was more like sexual though for me. I didn't like hearing that.
Look at that red bone. There's some old people saying that.
Yes.
But I used to get I used to get Midnight, Shadow, anything dark was related to this guy.
African booty scratcher.
Oh my goodness. Oh, so
I used to say that to my brothers.
African booty scratcher is, man.
That's so wrong. And I'm laughing, but it's so wrong.
I used to get that all the time, and now if I have an itch, I refuse to scratch simply because somebody's going to come out the woodworks and talking about, I knew it.
But the things that I look back now that I realized I should have spoke up and said something was when people used to say stuff to me like, oh, you can only be half offended, or you don't really count. Like if they're talking badly about people of color, they'll say, well, you don't really count. Like as if I'm feeling the same way they're feeling and it's okay to just go ahead and talk. And I hated that, and my mom has jungle fever, and I'd be like, what are you talking about? But it set the tone, right? For me, as far as even dating, right? Because even though my father was black and my father was very dark skinned, I used to feel like that I got more trouble from the black peers, my black peers, than I got from my non-black peers. And so when they're always giving me a hard time, it's really hard to want to hang and stay because I felt like I was always trying to prove my blackness, right? So
well, let me add to it, because we talk about racism in different ways or from different cultures or whatever, but we have it within our own communities. So like with the School Days movie, like with how we grew up, playing the dozens and teasing one another. I remember.
What's that?
Well, it's like when you joke, you make a joke on somebody else.
Like
it's
your
like
mama's fat.
going back and forth.
Okay,
your mama's so fat that
clowning.
Yeah, but it's called playing the dozens, which has a historical attachment to it, and everything goes back to slavery. We just continue to carry on these traditions, but in our own community, like I was called an Oreo more times than not. Why do you speak like that? Why do you act like that? And I'm like, this is how I act. This is how I grew up. I grew up in the same household as my brothers and my sisters. I don't know what makes me different.
And then on the other side, there's people that will say to you, you speak so well.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, you are so articulate. I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do?
It's offensive because I get it that maybe their exposure is less than the average person, depending on where they are. But I always feel like I always say, like, we talk like the people who speak on the news.
I like when you say that.
Yeah.
Because I grew up watching TV and just watching the news after the noontime news in the summertime before the soap operas come on. So I would watch that, Channel 27 news in Youngstown. Yes, I'm a nerd. But I get what you're saying. Yeah. They speak so well.
Right. But okay, so let's go back to what you're attracted to, because as you were, I know you went to the military super young. You were like 18, right?
19 when I joined. Yeah.
So you didn't really get, like, your whole dating experience was very similar to mine. All of your dating experience was prior to marrying your spouse.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess that's everybody's dating experience, but it was such a young age, right?
Yeah, I started.
Yeah,
we'll keep certain stories, but
no, I want to hear it. No,
so
I started dating. I would say dating like boy crazy, and dating's dumb because nobody had a car, so it was.
But just, you go into the park and you walk in and
or you're just talking on the phone and writing notes. Mm-hmm. But I'd say around 12.
Yeah, same.
For me, I was like boy crazy. Yeah, and
I wasn't boy crazy.
Well, I could say this because I looked at my journal. Yeah, but the stuff I was saying about each boy, like I remember saying things about their ethnicity and that they have an accent or that people are making fun of me because I'm with this white kid. Like there was this one boy I really, really cared about, and he was like my first. I think he was like my first kind of true love feelings, and he was white, and I got so much shit from people for dating him, from my black peers and the community of older adults even around me. And I remember breaking up with him and telling him is because I can't handle it.
Yeah.
Like I can't handle the crap talkers.
It's something, I mean, it sticks with you. I remember, and it's one of the things that sticks with me. I remember when I was dating a young white girl, and I brought her over to the house, and the way my parents' house is set up is you come in through the side door, you have a basement, and then you have some stairs that leads to the kitchen and upstairs. And it's kind of dark there. And she had a little crop top haircut. I don't know, it was like sideways, Mary J. Blige-ish back in the day. Yeah, a little shave on the side.
Salt and pepper.
And so my mom couldn't see her all the way. And then when she saw her, she immediately came to me and was like, baby, is she white? I said, yeah, Ma. It's like, but it wasn't about the color of her skin. It was the fact that I was attracted to her. Mm-hmm. Just who she was as a person. So I never really focused on, as I was going through and dating, I never focused on what somebody's race was.
Right.
I focused on the individual. And I like smart people.
Yeah, the energy too. Yeah.
Smart people, good energy. That's what we wanted to focus on.
But the reality is that might be your first attraction.
Yeah.
But the second thought is, am I going to have some stuff to deal with? Because going into a relationship, I think that if anybody says they don't see color, that is not true.
Yeah.
And you can't not think about cultural differences, because if you're going to have kids with this person, or even think about having a family or bringing them to your family, the thoughts of having to navigate how to approach these things has to be conversed, because you can't act like it's not there and then be surprised when something goes down.
No, absolutely.
And then when there's a problem, have to try to figure out how we're going to fix this problem,
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
So we have to go into it. And I remember having discussions with you about, I said something along the lines of, and this may be really blunt, but I said, I've never seen myself as black as I've ever seen myself until I got with you.
Right.
And that's because you're a black man that's obviously black. I went most of my life being ambiguous, having an ambiguous family. My late husband was half Puerto Rican, as far as we know, because he didn't know his bio dad. His mother is white, mostly Irish, and I'm white, English. My dad's black from deep South Mississippi, and my daughter is blonde, blue-eyed, and very fair skinned. My first child I had. And then my son is dark hair, dark eyes. And there was a point where I realized, well, yes, I'm going to have to speak to my children about their blackness.
Right.
But with life happening and all of the things that I was managing, every 6 months there seemed to be a new tragedy or trauma or something going on that I had to manage. Yeah. That was literally at the bottom of my list. All I cared about was my kids were happy and healthy. Right. They were too young for me to be concerned about having to address it at the time. But the things we did in our house, which was celebrate Black History Month, listen to certain types of music that I grew up listening to, eating the cultural food,
right.
making all the dishes. I make gumbo every year for Christmas. Talking about family members. My family's small, so the black side is really separate, and then my sister and her family is pretty much the black people that my kids were raised interacting with,
right.
And so when I got with you, it was like, oh, I'm walking down the street and we're black. But before it was like, I didn't feel like anybody was looking at anything.
Yes, no question.
Yeah, except looking at my daughter like, oh, you look like the nanny. Are you the nanny? Because she's so fair.
Oh my God. It's so funny that you say that, because I remember how we'll be in the store. And we're walking through the store, and I'll see a black person, and we kind of give each other the, what's happening? You give each other the nod, and then we walk past and go into the other aisle, and be like, hey, where do you know him from? It's like, I don't know that man.
Yeah.
I don't know him.
I know. I'm always like, why is it that everybody automatically knows how to do that? And I felt so not black in that moment. You know what I mean? Because those are the things I never experienced because I wasn't with a Black man in a relationship to where I was going to the grocery store and interacting with other Black men. And that was a thing. I just never experienced it. And I mean, I've seen it on TV and stuff like that.
Right.
But when it was actually happening, it was like, wow, that's like a real thing.
Yeah, it is. And I tell you, in regards to that, I seek those relationships. I really do. Where we live at, I love being here.
Yeah.
But
the population
is the population is 1.9% Black.
Yeah, I wrote it down somewhere.
So it's difficult. Yeah, I mean, you come here and you like, where the Black people at? Where we at? So put up the Black symbol or something like that.
The Batman symbol.
Yeah, let's
the Black man symbol.
So when we see each other in the community and, you know, we're out and we're shopping and we're doing whatever, I want to make those connections and I want to say, hey, where you from? What do you do? What brought you here? How long you been here? Let's connect. Yeah. And that is something that I can truly appreciate about this, about us being able to make those connections with folks. And but it's tough because some people don't want to even acknowledge, which is
right. But it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So, but we what I'd like to know is like how people have done it, you know, and our situation is very kind of minor because we have things we could say, oh, did you do this when you were growing up? Yeah. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. You know, we have like a language that's very similar. Do, It's kind of like how Puerto Ricans and Mexicans can talk, even though the Spanish is different. They understand what each other's saying. And it's kind of like that with us. But I think that there's some ways that, you know, people can start that conversation, especially if, you know, you meet someone and it's your first experience with another culture at all. And so the culture in general, like discuss the differences and the value differences and the customs. Yes. You know what I mean? So like there's people celebrate holidays differently. I never heard of the Day of the Dead, which I'm not even going to attempt to try to say that in Spanish, even though I tried, but it doesn't sound good. Dios de los Muertos.
I can't say it. I'm gonna say it right here. Carlos said it with so much passion, and his voice was just so deep in Telemundo. And I was like, "Oh man, say it again." Dia de los Muertos.
Yeah, but I mean, like I didn't even know that existed. I remember seeing all the decorations and the way people would dress up and things they would put at the altar. But we just recently had a conversation with a couple that we met, and they're a black man and a Hispanic girl, and they were talking about a woman, and they were talking about how they start celebrating that every year now because it's basically, you know, recognizing and honoring the people who have passed, right? Yes. And so that was a major thing for them and something new for the husband, right? And then he brought his family into the celebration as well. They started it, I guess, in October, and they kept it all the way through Christmas because that's when the family was visiting, and so they wanted everybody to still see it up there. Yeah. And they added family members along the way from his side. So it was something really interesting they did. But and talking about the food and the music and the traditions that you grew up with. Right. And unfortunately, I didn't grow up with too many traditions because I don't know. Yeah. It was mostly food. I know that my mom used to say, she used to make us watch The Wizard of Oz every year, but then she'd make us watch The Wiz. Good. Because she's like, you got to watch both. Yeah. And I guess that was her way of saying you're both, so you got to look at it on, you know.
But it's good. It's good seeing both dynamics, and I like.
Although it was totally different. Like
well,
I didn't like The Wiz. I didn't like it.
We're gonna talk about this later on, but anyway, it's good to be able to bring cultures together. If you are in a diverse relationship from different cultures, talk about it. Explore each other's joys and passions for how you grew up. That, I mean, I've learned just from where we live at, being able to connect with other cultures and seeing what they do brings us closer together as a community. Regardless of race and color and creed, it brings us together as a community because we're able to attach ourselves to what someone else is doing and appreciate and realize that, we're all pretty similar.
Yeah, it's just we just do it different.
That's
but
it.
The baseline, the foundation of what we're doing is kind of similar.
Yeah.
But it's the conversations that people need to have because, like, for instance, death.
Yeah.
In some cultures, the only way to have someone go to heaven is if they're buried, in the ground. And some people's cultures, they don't embalm until a certain point or whatever, like after a certain amount of hours or days. And some people only cremate.
Right.
And there's different, like, even though you can have maybe the same beliefs in God or the religions that kind of blend and it doesn't matter so much. But when it comes to stuff like that, you have to realize that there's a whole history of how you were raised and believe in what happens when you die.
That's so crazy. It's so when I was growing up, it was you have to be buried. You have to be buried. The family members go to your grave site and they see you, they visit you on a regular basis. Well, I was in Japan when my son died. And living in Japan, he had to be cremated. There was no burial ground.
Because it was the law, right?
It was the law. And we had to take him and have him cremated. And that changed my way of thinking as well. Because now my son is with me. So my son's with me all the time. And I don't have to, like, can you imagine if I had my son buried in Ohio? Then what? Now I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss that connection. So there's certain things that happen for certain reasons. But if we understand those particular reasons and take a moment to realize what is being done culturally, it could make a difference for us.
Well, yeah, and have those conversations before you have to make those decisions.
Definitely.
Because, as we know, you don't expect things to happen. And even when you are expecting it, you're never really ready. And some of those things, you have to take into consideration, even just the way family members feel.
Yeah.
I know I decided, well, talking to Greg, we all decided that cremation was the way to go because having a burial site with so many kids and adult children not staying in one place, everybody relocates, like the burden of having a place that they feel they have to go to visit, like take a trip to go visit and then feel guilt if they can't go frequently enough. We decided we were going to do the cremation and everyone got their own little urn and could carry that with them and decide on their own what they wanted to do with it and how they were kind of settling in their mind where their father was or is. And in my mind, and it might be my years of nursing, when you die, your body is just a vehicle. Yeah. Your soul goes somewhere else. And that body is what failed. And I don't want anything to do with that.
Right.
That needs to go away. And ashes to ashes.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned. So that's my belief. But we had to talk about that too, because even just for each other, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you actually want? I need to do what it is you want.
Yeah.
Not what I necessarily think should be done. And, or you think should be done. It's what I would want.
Yeah.
And I'm going to want what's most easy for you. And and they don't make refrigerators that can fit in, our house legally, because that's probably would be what you would do. Freezers.
No, there's a movie called Boxing Helena, and I can put you in a case or something.
Yeah, no.
You don't like that?
That's not going to work.
That's okay.
That, especially for my children, they won't want to see that.
They ain't got to come to the house. They fine. No, I'm just kidding.
The other thing is language. We talked about that.
Yeah.
Social location, considering social location differences from your partner and how you can be respectful of those differences.
Right.
I think I was in a suburban, middle class area, not realizing it because, we're always, when we're kids, we always need money and your parents don't want to give you any. And then it was not that way for you. So I grew up with amenities and benefits that you didn't have growing up.
Right.
And some of the things I'm like, wait, you didn't have that? You didn't know what that is? I had every Cabbage Patch doll.
Yeah,
I had every strawberry shortcake doll. Like I got
You were
everything I ever
killing it
wanted.
out there.
I had the first this and I had the brand new bike every year. Whatever I had, I asked for, I got. And so
I'm gonna tell you what I was doing. I remember we moved to South Carolina, and somehow or another, I had a He-Man set Castle Grayskull.
by the power of
Yeah.
Grayskull.
So it would open up like a book. It was like this big or whatever, and I would have friends come over. And so it was like, all right, it's time to go. And I'll close that up on some of their toys. And I would say,
You were stealing from your friends.
I was like, what? How old was I? It was like 6th grade. And I remember
you just
that.
admitted that you committed a crime.
I was stealing toys I didn't have.
Yeah.
But again, that taught me work ethic. We went back to Youngstown. I got my first job at 12 and been a straight arrow ever since. A nerd, as you would call me, but
yeah, you're sexy.
following the rules. I appreciate that.
I did steal some things when I was younger, and it wasn't because I didn't have the money. It was because it gave me this rush of adrenaline.
Yeah.
I used to steal bike parts from people and build a bike. I used to race bikes and, like kid racing and dirt bikes, And so I used to steal parts from people and then make my yeah. My dad had me tinkering around in the garage a lot, so I used to want to be a mechanical engineer, but it didn't go that way.
Well, you gotta.
I took the test and it said something else.
I doubt it. You're very smart, but you're still a thief.
Yeah.
Because you stole my heart.
Wow. Okay.
All right, let's go.
Prejudice in society. So we obviously that's something they need to talk about.
Yeah.
And parenting, and the differences in how you were raised, and cultural differences in how you were raised. Like, I hear a lot of people say things like, "We believe, that this is how you discipline a child."
Yeah.
So if you plan on having children, or there's children that come into the relationship already with some cultural expectations, because as Black people, we have a different, and I'm not speaking for all Black people, but in my experience and most of the people that I do know, we all kind of grew up in the Gen Xers anyway, with a certain similar discipline.
Yeah, getting that behind toe up. That's what it was.
Pretty much, yes. And because of their parents, our parents' parents, and how they were raised. And we raise our kids differently than that because we don't want them to experience the same things we did.
Right.
But then there's still some people who believe that spanking is the only way to discipline, at least from a certain age, right? Yeah. And then there's people who absolutely would not lay a hand on their child. So coming into relationships like that, I mean, that should be a conversation that you have anyway.
Yeah,
right?
prior to.
But sometimes it's cultural. Like we've all seen the chancla thrown across the room, and the videos of the Filipino moms and how they discipline their kids. And it's funny, but it's also serious and conversations that need to be had. So I don't know too many people that have issues in their relationship that they openly discuss with us. But sometimes I wonder, like, what goes on behind those closed doors when there is stuff that, like, one spouse may kind of go, you don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah, we're talking about this.
Yeah.
You don't know anything about that. We've seen that.
Yeah, we have.
And it's not fair.
That's not fair at all.
Yeah.
Because there should have been a conversation that took place prior to that happening. Prior to you saying, oh, you be quiet. You don't have a say in this conversation. No,
or you wouldn't understand that.
Yeah, you wouldn't understand because you're not like me.
Or you're not Hispanic, so you don't know what we do when we're, It's little digs like that that can really mess with your relationship. And it's something that's never going to go away.
Yeah.
So if you don't talk about it, it can be a constant problem. And not to mention that the kids are watching. And the kids are going to have issues with their identity. and set positive versus negative on those cultures growing up, thinking that that's just the way it is.
Right.
We've decided in our house that, I mean, even though my kids are very ambiguous looking, my son was shocked to, we did his little ancestry thing, and he was shocked to learn that he was mostly white.
Yeah.
Because of the dilution of the other ethnicities. But and he's just kind of perplexed, like, how can I be all those things? And he's kind of young, and I don't necessarily need to go into that right now with him, but we have his printout, and we're ready to sit down and talk about it.
Yeah.
But we also have to have that conversation with him about the fact that he is a young Black man.
Exactly.
And that's a conversation that some people don't understand, that most Black families have to have with their children.
You have to have the talk, because when you walk out of our house, you are looked at, regardless of how you feel, regardless of how you think, you are looked at as a Black man. For
People
Jackson.
see you as a Black man. Yeah.
So when they see you as a Black man, what comes with that? What fear, what threat, what expectation, what comes with it? So he has to understand how, and it's very unfortunate, but you got to understand how to navigate through this world.
This world. Especially right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something I never thought about in depth until I got with you.
Well, hello.
And then I was like, can you do it?
And
we can do it, but like, I need you to do it. And I have this expectation that you know how to do it. Yeah. I mean, you have 2 Black boys that are in their late 20s, but it's a man thing. It's something that as a man, you have experience with that I don't.
Yeah.
Because I do bring that privilege with me.
Yeah, I understand that. And here's a trippy thing. My boys grew up overseas. So they spent a good portion of their life outside this country. So their view of things is different. I remember when we came back to the States, and I was driving with my son, Miles, and he was looking around and he was like, "Dad, is this the hood?" I was like, "Yes." Yeah. I mean, it felt like a PBS movie or something like that. I was like, "Yes, son, this is the hood." But he never really experienced that. I mean, he spent most of his time in Japan. So he's living in Japan. His friends are, Japanese, Korean, Filipino, Black, white, all different cultures. And he sees himself as a walking, living melting pot. Color did not matter. And I didn't realize that they didn't actually see color. People can talk about it all day. "Oh, I don't see color." That's garbage. But they didn't actually see color. They saw the human being.
Right.
And until we came to the States and they were confronted with their white friends wanting to say the N-word, did we have to have a specific conversation of, this is why.
Yeah. And that happened with our 13-year-old.
Yeah.
Same thing. You overheard a conversation. He was on the phone with his friends, and there was like a speaker on.
Yeah, I was
talking.
Walking by his room, going to do laundry and checking in, and I heard one of his friends, "Hey, Jackson, can I say the N-word?" And it was, hold on. And we come into the room, and this was a teachable moment to where, "Hey, guys, it's Jackson's dad. Let's talk about this." And that wouldn't
have been how that went down if I had heard that.
I know. But we have to understand that there are people that are ignorant.
Yeah, in the definition of ignorant. Yeah. Like, not stupid. It's don't know.
They don't know.
Lack of knowledge, yes.
So it is our job to teach. Now, don't get me wrong. There is moments when the teachable moment has to go down in a different way.
And there's moments where it's not our responsibility to teach someone something they should learn on their own.
Yeah.
We're kind of at that point now, and I speak for some people that I know, that we're tired of doing the explaining. And that if something is confusing you or perplexing you and you don't understand, then it's your responsibility as a person living in this world right now to learn and ask questions.
Yeah.
You know, I'm happy to answer questions, but I'm not going to go out and try to educate people and sit them down and say, let's talk about how you guys feel about this. No, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm open. I would love for someone to come to me and say, hey, I see you as a friend and I need to have this conversation with you because I know that you're going to help me find the right answers.
Yeah.
And I want to, I feel safe talking to you. Mm-hmm. So I have questions and I'd like to know if you can help me find the answers. That's a great conversation. And that's a conversation people should be having in their relationships too.
Very true.
But
there's a duality in people, especially this day and age. You have the feeling of Michelle Obama, when they go low, we go high, which sticks out for me 98% of the time.
Yeah.
But sometimes I got a Kendrick Lamar and pop out and show people what it is.
Yeah.
So you pick and choose what you do, but you teach. And that's what we need to do. We need to teach. And as people being in a relationship, we have to have communication and we have to talk about the differences and talk about how we're going to navigate in this world as different people from different cultures in one relationship.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you have very sexy lips.
Ooh. Well, thank you, ma'am.
While you're talking, I'm just looking at those lips.
Well, on that note,
it's time to go. All right. Well, thank you for listening.
Yeah,
We've
really
enjoyed
appreciate
this. This is a great first episode.
Yeah.
We got lots to come this season.
Exciting, very exciting season. A lot of great conversations, a lot of great people. Stay tuned.
Just a quick reminder, we are not licensed therapists, and everything we discuss here is based purely on our personal opinions and life experiences. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss a future conversation.
This podcast is brought to you in collaboration with A Different Day Radio Productions, a podcast network bringing radio to the modern age. It's recorded at the Film Hub in Vista, California, a creative, collaborative co-working environment. Thank you so much for tuning in.